And take it away, Dave.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Chris, and good afternoon, everyone. Thrilled to be here. Thrilled to have you here. We'll do introductions in a second, but just very quickly, as I was just saying, April is Financial Literacy Month, and Big Four Bio and Life Science Wealth have teamed up for the first time to co-host this series of webinars on financial literacy for life science professionals. And you'll understand as we start talking why this is important and maybe slightly different for this audience, different in a good way. So we're excited to share some of our thoughts. Just as a way of introduction, my name is Dave Whalen. I'm the Chief Business Officer for Big Four Bio, and if hopefully you are a subscriber already. If you're not, big4bio.com. We are the premier aggregator of news, developments, updates in the life sciences sector, kind of covering the country and sometimes the world, but very much focused on some of the most significant life science markets here in the U.S., including Philadelphia. And we are doing a webinar series for the first time this week, where we're bringing local experts in each of those markets together with other experts to share their insights on financial planning, kind of why it's important, and help to get you started. We would certainly like this to be interactive, so feel free. There is the Q&A function in Zoom webinar, so feel free to type a question in Q&A, and we will either answer it live as we're talking. We'll answer it in with a typed message if that makes sense, and if for some reason we can't cover your question, we'll definitely follow up afterwards. And so with that. Would love to introduce my fearless co-host with this, Chris Sarlo from Life Science Wealth, to share a little bit of his background about why we're doing this and why he's doing this.
All right, thanks, Dave. Thanks everybody for being a part of this and for joining us today. And we'll kind of get right down into it. So my name is Chris Sarlo. As Dave said, I'm the founder of Life Science Wealth. We're located just outside of the Washington, D.C. market to cover off the capital region, but we are licensed in all 50 states. And we are exclusive to the life science industry. So every one of our clients is in life sciences in some shape or form. This company was started in 2020. I've been doing wealth planning since 1998, so going on my 27th year now. And Life Science Wealth was started actually due to my father. My father is my mentor, my idol, and any other positive word that I can say about a man. And my dad actually had a massive heart attack. And it was the advancements of life science that saved my dad's life, and not only saved his life, but allow him to live a completely normal life. And when you think of things like pharma and med device and um, a lot of the things that we all take for granted, that the science is just going to kind of be there, and it's the things that you guys do every single day to make sure these things are being advanced. It is my way of giving back to you guys, of helping you guys take the financial stress off of your lives so you can work on the science in a more efficient and effective manner. And that's kind of the basis of what Life Science Wealth is here to do. We understand the nuances of what life science professionals are going to go through, and we're here to help in any way we can to make sure you guys continue to push forward. And that's me.
Perfect. Mark Brumbelow from PYA, you want to say hello?
Hey, sure. Thanks for letting us chat with you guys today. I'm Mark Brimbelow. I head up the tax function at PYA. We are a national tax audit and healthcare consulting firm based primarily on the East Coast, but we serve clients in all 50 states. We spend probably, my guess is 80% of our time as a firm in the healthcare sector, but in life sciences. And that goes from physician practices to technology startups that are focused on medical devices, all the way up to large hospital systems. And so we love that space. We're committed to that space, and we're excited to get a chance to share with you today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And kind of representing the Pennsylvania story, Jody, please say hello.
Hi. So I'm Jody Anderson Leidy, and I'm an attorney with Saxon and Stump. And Saxon and Stump is a large regional law firm with offices all across Pennsylvania, New Jersey. Also have an office in Charleston. And I do trust and estate work. I also do some real estate work. We also have a large healthcare practice where we represent a lot of hospitals and physicians' offices and healthcare providers. I'm essentially in doing trust and estate planning for folks. So
Perfect. Well,
Thank you,
thank
guys.
you. And yeah, thank you. And I should have said when I was introducing this one, not only am I excited to be on this one, but I actually grew up in Pennsylvania. So Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, Jody, if you know where Lewisburg is.
I do.
Anyway, excited to be connected to this one, and I'm glad
Even
everyone's
though we're in the Philadelphia market, I gotta say my Pittsburgh Steelers stuff is sitting behind me for all the Pennsylvania people that are here.
Now we're gonna start some arguments here, Chris, probably. But anyway, so I'm glad everyone's got got a interesting perspectives on the industry as well. And Jody, it's good to hear, and we're looking forward to getting your insights there. When Chris and I started to talk about this series a few months ago, we he was sharing with me kind of the some of the unique aspects that what makes life science professionals, as I said, sort of different or unique. And so I know you've got some thoughts. I know Mark does. Jody, I'm sure you do. And so kicking this off, working with life sciences professionals from a financial planning standpoint, what are the common patterns you see? Maybe even some blind spots that show up.
So, when it comes to life sciences, as I said, we deal exclusively inside of life sciences. So there's kind of two major nuances that we tend to see pretty consistently when it comes to it. Number one is obviously the commitment to science, right? The people that are part of this industry are extremely laser focused. They spend a ton of their time, whether it's their working time or their leisure time, still thinking about the science that they're working on, whether it's the device, the pharma, whatever else it might be, the research that they're doing. And what that tends to do is it tends to put the financial means on the back burner. It becomes kind of out of focus, out of sight, out of mind. We are arguably the smartest industry in the world. I openly say that. We are one of the most well-paid industries in the world. The 2023 number was 142,700 on average for the life science industry. But we are below national averages when it comes to net worth. So an extremely smart industry that gets paid really well, yet is below national average when it comes to net worth. And that's kind of what we do a lot of our measurement on is growing net worth over time. And so when you have that laser focused and you're not working on some of these other things, it makes a lot of people have to play catch up in their later years because they didn't concentrate it on the things earlier enough in their career. And then it becomes a very highly stressful situation because people want to retire in 5, 7, 10 years when they start talking to us and they're kind of nowhere near where that number is. So we want people to kind of move it to the forefront a little bit at an earlier age, or at the very least make that decision that we're going to start to take some positive steps towards worrying about the self and worrying about their families inside of life sciences and see what we can do to release some of that pressure for them.
Awesome. Mark, what are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, so it's interesting to think about how life sciences is unique. We do a lot of work with life sciences and a little bit with kind of technology startup ideas, a little bit broader. And I think the most challenging tax aspect of life sciences is the fact that your roles and your positions may change over time, dramatically altering the tax planning needs that you have in place. And so that can range from kind of an employer-employee relationship early on that could become potentially a founder, a startup leadership position, as you're trying to develop your market, you're trying to develop your product for market. then that could actually potentially lead to an exit event. So you've got such a wide range of tax planning needs that would be implemented at each of those levels. Probably need to be modified as you continue to grow in your career and as you continue to stretch. And so that's what I think makes life sciences so critically important and candidly interesting for me when it comes to tax planning and tax strategy. Dave, and this is no slight on Dave, but he said that the work y'all do is exciting and the work we do maybe less so. I actually really get excited about taxes, and people think it's a little bit odd, but I do feel like the thing that I've always said to people that we've worked alongside is my highest calling is to allow you, as in the life sciences sector, to serve in your highest calling. Your highest calling is probably not beating down the trial balance. It's probably not trying to learn the nuances of the new tax law. It's developing your product. It's developing your technology. It's serving the world population in a critical way. So that puts me in a great position to be a help to you by bringing that to the table. That's a little bit of the 2 cents about what I think tax is like. I've noticed now I talk with my hands a lot, so hopefully y'all are seeing that.
Good to have you back on screen.
Oh, I know. I had to do this over audio only yesterday, and I felt like I was flying blind.
No, love it. And actually, by the way, the point you make about I was just on a discussion with a group that's working on a grant, and we're talking about sort of the different roles that come into that grant team, and the idea that you've got the scientists who love doing the science, and you need to have the finance team that loves doing the finance, and that's what makes these things great, is it's figuring out, and we'll come to that,
Yep.
what's the right team where hopefully everyone on the team is great at what they do and loves what they do. And
Yep.
so that's important. Jody, would love your thoughts on kind of what have you seen makes life science professionals a bit, unique, or what patterns do you see in terms of their financial planning aspect?
Yeah, well, I mean, I want to just kind of tack on to Mark's a little bit, and that is that, I agree, like it is rewarding to, help folks that aren't as educated, perhaps, as in the estate planning area, estate administration, trusts, estates, that kind of those areas. Life sciences folks, as Chris said, are brilliant, are incredibly valuable, but that's what they know. So I really view my role as kind of educating about estate planning, trusts, whether they're needed, inheritance taxes, federal taxes, federal state taxes, I should say, so that then they can make educated decisions. I find that not only with life science professionals, but with a lot of my clients, there is so much misinformation out there about, well, what is probate and what is a trust and what are the tax consequences of death, that a large part of my job is simply educating and myth busting, kind of like a myth buster. Not a real exciting one, but so that's kind of how I view my role.
And for everybody listening, the reason why we have estate planners for the different states that are here is because state law changes fairly drastically from one state to another when it comes to estates and when it comes to legacy planning. So we wanted literally expertise from the given state to talk about how they do stuff differently, because planning in Pennsylvania is going to be very different than planning in California. This is very different planning in Maryland. So when you're moving states, you need to do planning for that state because you are going to be subject to the laws of that state. And if you were in Maryland and then moved to California, the will or trust that you set up in Maryland may not be executable to the way you wanted them once you change states. So that's why Jody is here specifically with Pennsylvania law.
No, great point, Chris, and good foreshadowing for some of what I know we'll talk about. And you mentioned kind of the mobility, but kind of before we dig into that, just really, what are we talking about when it comes to wealth management? I recognize that it's more than just a stock portfolio. So how do you kind of define and encapsulate this?
Yeah, the big thing is, as we've kind of talked about before, is the vast majority of planners, consultants, the people that are out there are some version of an investment advisor. They're there to tell you what stock, bond, mutual fund, ETF to go, when to buy it, when to sell it. It's all portfolio performance based. That is one aspect of a true wealth plan. We deal in all 9 areas of wealth. So we're going to help with the investment side. We're going to help with retirement planning, but we're also going to help with taxes. We're going to help with estate planning. We're going to help with cash flow. We're going to help with credit. We're going to help with philanthropy. We're going to help with protection and the insurances and what should happen if something goes wrong. We're going to deal and look at all 9 areas of those for you to make sure that when there's a pitfall, when something happens, if you lose your job, if there's a death in the family, if all the different things that could possibly happen over the course of somebody's life, if that happens, a wealth manager, sorry, like an investment advisor, isn't really going to do anything for you. You're not going to go out and say, my spouse died, what stock should I buy or sell today? That it's not in the logical sense of what needs to be happening. So as we continue to play out and as we kind of do everything, the vast majority, I always kind of say it's like the iceberg, right? The investment side is the 10% that you see above the water. Everything else we do will never show on a performance statement. It'll never show on any type of statement, but it gives you that peace of mind. It gives you that stress-free access. It gives you that knowledge that if when the crap hits the fan, so to speak, that your family is covered and taken care of because we've thought about different scenarios that are going to occur at some point in time in your life and what we can do to balance it. So you can go grieve, you can go worry about what you're doing, you can go worry about the family because you have somebody in your corner that's taking care of all those other things for you. And that's where the big stress relief actually comes off, is to make sure that you have that balance between what's going to be out there. So for us, making sure all 9 areas of wealth are working in tandem with each other is actually more beneficial to grow your wealth over time, because we're not dealing in small little band-aid solutions. We're going to say, well, maybe, and Mark will justify this, maybe it makes more sense to pay a little bit more tax today to save a lot of tax in the future, right? And it's not that band-aid solution. It's true planning for knowing what's to come and to say that this event is larger than the small current event, and let's start looking at ways to take care of that now.
Yeah, no, that's great. That said, and I know we talked about this, yesterday. There's been an awful lot of what feel like big events over the past several years, right? From pandemic and the ups and downs of the market to crypto to everything that's been happening over the past few months, tariffs, et cetera. So how do you help clients kind of get beyond that to think about the true long term?
For depending on the age of the client, there's different risk levels, right? And different people can handle more volatility depending on their age and depending on their mindset, right? So there's financial risk and then there's emotional risk. And there's some people who say financial, you can take the volatility, but their emotion doesn't allow them to do that. So we have to kind of balance the two of them and merge the two of them together to make sure what's going to be there for them. But at the end of the day, if you're not in retirement and you're still looking at the future retirement planning, having these dips in the market is a huge advantage. It's going shopping when things are on sale, right? It's knowing that a bunch of these big companies that are fundamentally not affected by tariffs, even though the front page newspaper says they are, you're buying stuff 10% off of what it was, 15% off of what it was just a month ago. So there's ways to load up. And this is where some of the things like dollar cost averaging makes sense. Most of our companies are dividend payers, which means we have drip programs that are set up inside, which means as the dividends get paid, they're buying more shares at the cheaper prices. So it's automatically kind of dollar cost averaging for you and things along those lines. But we maneuver a portfolio that needs to be, but quite frankly, at the end of the day, this is not about the stock portfolio. This is not about the volatility that's going to be out there. This is This is about understanding who you are, what you're looking for, what goal you're trying to get to, and putting you on the proper path to achieve that goal. That to us is going to be way more important than what stock bond mutual fund we buy. And that's the big difference between what we do compared to what other people do.
Got it. No, that's helpful, and I think certainly everyone's managing their portfolio, but as we've talked about in this industry, a lot of what a lot of what drives people beyond creating life-saving world-changing technologies is the upside that comes along with that, and once upon a time, maybe it was fairly standard. There was traditional stock option agreement, and that would be enough. And over the past several years, continues to get more complicated, kind of an array of letters and numbers. And so, Mark, help us understand kind of what should professionals be thinking about when it comes to the world of equity options and an upside.
Sure. And you kind of stole a little bit of the thunder, which is the high variability of these products that have started to surface. It used to be you had incentive stock options, you had non-qualifying options, both of which had different taxability problems. They both had they were both effective and efficient in their own ways, but now you have a lot more interesting alternatives, especially if you're trying to navigate entity choice selections that have been made previously, or maybe you're starting out, you're making an entity choice selection now. What alternatives exist? And so the important thing is I could talk a little bit about the difference between an incentive stock option and a restricted stock unit. Restricted stock on the level, stock appreciation rights, those sorts of things. All of those things can be effective. But I think the important thing to communicate here in Financial Literacy Month is just understanding those documents, those award documents will have a lot of information in them. So you just need to make sure you're familiar with that. Each of those awards probably has a different vesting schedule. Some of that may be performance-based, some of it might be time-based. You need to make sure you understand that vesting schedule. The other piece is the taxability is going to change. So some of those are relatively short on value when they're awarded. For example, stock appreciation rights, that's not really anything that's transferable, so there's not really any value there. So that's taxable once it's the appreciation is, you have an appreciation event, right? Those kinds of things, it's just important to understand those, have a conversation with your team of advisors to make sure that you understand the ramifications of each of those awards. And then the other thing that I just encourage the audience to consider, and I'm going to give you a specific example. There might be an alternative to, depending on the award, to make a very specific election to basically take into income now the value of the award now, and therefore turn any subsequent value appreciation into capital gain treatment. And that's a more tax efficient treatment. But the tricky bit is you have a 30-day window from the date of the award to make that election with the IRS. And so this is not a conversation that can be, hey, when you're doing your year-end tax planning, hey, in March, we did this award. What kind of options do I have? Well, gosh, that ship comes and goes in the night pretty quick. So I just encourage you to be pretty proactive in conversations with your advising team when you start having awards like this being part of your compensation package. They really can be a great tool, especially because I know how this works. You're betting on yourself for the future, and so if you've got a great product out there, there's a huge need, then you can potentially get a nice windfall related to the increased value of that equity. But it's just important to understand it, understand the taxability of it, and have those conversations early.
Got it. And just on that note, Mark, will you get involved in the compensation agreements that touch on that? Where do where does your kind of role start in that sort of process?
So it's a great question, and I'm going to give you what I would down here in the South we would call the Sunday school answer, which is it starts way before that, right? It can't really start with the hey, I got a new job. They're going to comp part of me in equity. Because guess what? You're not going to want to go up to me if without an established relationship and have that kind of what is a pretty intimate conversation about compensation. Those things are pretty private. And so what I want to suggest is stretch that back 5 years. Start building your team of collaborators, your team of partners. We partner with our clients ultimately to try to help them get a more tax efficient answer. If you're able to do that early on, then you can have that trusting relationship to where, hey, I'm thinking about taking this new opportunity. It's maybe my base comp is lower, but I have this incentive stock option that I can consider here. Let's think about what that might look like. What's the upside? What are the risks? Having that conversation well before you're striking pen to paper on an employment agreement. I think that's important. So that's the Sunday school answer, but to give you the actual answer there, we would help you look at the operating or what I'll call the award agreement. There should be some documents related to the award. It would spell out exactly what I was talking about, the vesting schedule, the type of award, when probably some pricing components and stuff like that. So your advisor can walk you through what that would look like, what the considerations would be at any given point in time, and probably have relatively consistent and regular conversations with you about, hey, based on progress that you've seen, is this something we need to think about for the next quarter or the next 6 months, something like that. So that's kind of a bigger answer, but in the short term, we would certainly want to take a look at those agreements and walk through the impact of those agreements to you together.
Got it. And Chris, I don't know if that's something where do you get involved in that sort of like comp negotiation discussion as well?
We kind of join in at any point in time, right? If they're already our clients, then yes, we're going to have a much deeper conversation about that. If there's somebody new and they have an advisor who won't do that type of stuff with them, then that kind of shows the extra value add that we kind of bring to the table versus somebody else, because we're going to have that conversation with our clients and make sure those types of things have been put into place, right? So we don't mind having those intimate discussions. We don't mind. The more we know about the client, the better advice that we can give, and that's just going to be naturally on there, right? And if we know cash flow, if we know income, if we know asset value, if we know all these different types of things, the more comprehensive plan we're going to build for our client, because we know exactly what's the situation we're dealing with and how any change to that situation is going to affect the future outcomes of those things. So it becomes very important to have those conversations.
Awesome. That's great. Super helpful. Want to, switch gears a little bit, or, take this to a different level and, get into a bit more of the future planning for the inevitable. So, Jody, would love to chat with you a little bit about sort of wills, powers of attorney, what are these documents that you might help with, and when do you recommend those coming into play? And, what we talked about yesterday on some of these is, this might be different for a 25-year-old just out of college in their first job, single versus, you're married versus you're married with kids. So, walk us through kind of that timeline of these documents.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if I can just start real quick with just kind of explaining what are these documents, because I know that there's a lot of kind of some miscommunication about what they are. So a power of attorney is while you're alive. Power of attorney is we can do one that's financial and we do one that's for healthcare. And that is while you're alive. In the event that you become disabled or incapacitated, it appoints somebody as your agent to act on your behalf. And my advice truly is that anybody over the age of 18 should have one of these. Because once you're over the age of 18, your parents do not have the right anymore to make your decisions, get any information. If you're married, your spouse does not have the right to make your decisions, to access any accounts or assets that you may own in your own name alone. So, what ends up happening if somebody does not have a power of attorney and they become incapacitated? Then there has to be a guardianship hearing. So, a guardianship is where a petition is filed. Somebody is appointed as the guardian of the person and the guardian of the estate of that incapacitated person. And it is a costly process, not horrible costly, but costly enough. And it's a very emotional process. And I've had to do them for spouses where one spouse didn't have a power of attorney and the other spouse, in one situation, it was Alzheimer's, which there was no excuse for not having a power of attorney signed. But in one, it was a tragic car accident that resulted in the spouse being permanently disabled. And the court hearing is very emotional because you have doctors testifying that this loved one is never going to get better. Then that's the first part of the hearing is basically having that person rendered incapacitated. And then the second part is appointing somebody to be a guardian. That guardian has to then report to the court every single year. So you can avoid all of that with a very simple power of attorney. They are powerful documents, no pun intended, or maybe pun intended. So you have to be very careful about who you appoint, because it has to be somebody that you trust. It has to be somebody that you know is going to act in your best interest, not their own. So that's a power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney. Only good while you're alive. Then the will is the document that comes into play that transfers assets upon death. And one of the big misconceptions is that a will takes care of everything. And that's not really true. And as Chris, and this is one of the reasons too, why it's so important to have a team and to have your, advisor involved in your estate planning, because so many people's wealth are in perhaps qualified accounts, IRAs, 401ks, 403bs that have tax consequences and that have beneficiaries named on them. So when somebody passes away, if there are assets that have beneficiaries named on them, those assets do not go through the will. Those assets go to the beneficiary that you named. If you have assets that you own jointly with somebody, those assets are going to pass to that joint owner. It's not going to go through the will. So it's really important to understand that the will is one piece of the puzzle, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. And it's important to have these partners like Chris, like Mark, so that you can put the whole puzzle together with all these different varying assets.
Got it. And that's very helpful. And just following up on something Chris mentioned earlier, because we've been talking about this. I don't know where Pennsylvania stands in terms of some of these documents, and is this associated with the state? If you sign these documents or develop them and have them executed in Pennsylvania, does that apply when you get transferred to a job in San Francisco or vice versa?
So long as the documents are valid in the state where they were executed, they will be valid and in whatever state you move to. So it's basically the full faith and credit of the Constitution. So if you sign them in Pennsylvania and you move to California, they're still going to be valid in California. Are they going to be the best tool or the best document to address what happens when you die? Not sure. That's why you should at least have them reviewed by an attorney, but you don't have to do it, as soon as your boots hit the ground, because those documents will still be valid. And the other thing to keep in mind too is that if you don't have a will, for those assets that would have passed through your will, which are those assets that you own in your own name that don't have a beneficiary on it, so it could be, some of those assets that Mark was referring to. If you don't have a will, the state that you are a resident of at the time of your death determines where those assets go. And for Pennsylvania, the first, it's either 30 or 50,000, it doesn't come up that often, thank goodness, goes to your surviving spouse. And then the balance is divided between your spouse and your surviving children. And for a lot of folks, that's really probably not what they would want. They would probably want everything to go to their surviving spouse. Reason to make sure you do a will, because otherwise the state doesn't get it all. That's a myth. People think the state gets it all. They don't, but the state tells you where it will go. And sometimes that does not align with your actual desires.
Got it. Got it. And I know we're talking about this all, very much in the abstract, or there's different, different versions of this for every person. But what is this typically, what should someone be spending on something like this? And, in particular, when, somebody is doing this again right out of school, they don't have, they don't have any assets, they don't have any income. It sounds stressful, but it also sounds like this is not something that you want to wait until you've accumulated a ton of wealth before you start thinking about it.
Well, I mean, every region is probably going to have their going rates. Our going rate here in South Central Pennsylvania, you're probably looking at probably around $1,000 to do your will, your power of attorney, and your healthcare power of attorney. And again, keep in mind that we're also giving advice about inheritance taxes and beneficiary designations. We're looking at the whole picture. We're not just looking at those specific documents. Obviously, the more complicated, the more expensive it's going to be. If you're looking at doing some trust, if you have special circumstances, it's obviously going to be more expensive. But I think, for just your real basics, you're looking, $850 to $1,000, which is doable and really a wise use of your funds to make it easier for your family later.
Yeah, excellent. And by the way, I think even Southern California, which is definitely higher cost of living region than where you are. I think I think the cost is relatively comparable for sort of the basic documents. So Mark, because I don't know if you have thoughts about that just from your work as well in different regions.
I know that here in East Tennessee, our rates are probably as favorable as they are in anywhere in the Southeast. I know that there's a little bit of a coastal bias, but I don't know. I can't practice law as a CPA, so I'm not going to step on.
Right.
I'm not going to step on any toes. But that sounds like a completely reasonable number, and I'm going to tell you, I've got some examples in my own personal life of why that's money well spent. I've spent more on lawyers trying to get things squared away after the fact. When my mom passed away, she had very specific wishes that she just didn't tell anybody. I mean, she told people, she just didn't write down. So the state of Tennessee was actually pretty kind to work with us on executing in the way she wished it to. But at the same time, it was it was more than $1,000 to get that done.
Yeah, I think a lot of this comes down to this is we're talking about things that connect to the world of insurance, and a lot of this feels like insurance as well from a standpoint of you want to spend the money up front to make sure you're protected, as opposed to paying a lot more later on. And Jody, I'll ask one more question because I'm in California, and so I am always talking about technology, but you can. There's a lot of ways that you can go to Google, probably even Chat GPT, but let's stick with the Google version. But if somebody wants to do something basic with a boilerplate online, is that okay when they're 20 something, and then you improve it over time, or do you start with the flesh and blood?
Yeah, I mean it's a really good question, and I appreciate you bringing this up because it is a big hard no. And the reason being is I have had so many folks come into me who said, "Oh, I just got this off of online somewhere or from this company somewhere online or I googled this form." And the problem is that even the most generic forms use certain legal terms of art. And those legal terms of art end up determining where your assets may fall if somebody predeceases or this or that happens. And a lot of times when I explain, well, this is what your document says, this is how it would go. They go, oh, well, that's not what I thought it meant. That's not what I want it to do. And it's because they didn't understand the legal terms of art that were used within that document that really make a significant difference on how that document is interpreted. So, stuff online, Chat GPT, AI stuff, not a good idea. It really is important that you meet with somebody in person who can explain to you some of the nuances and make sure that the document that you sign is what you want. It is an expression of your intention clearly without any ambiguity. So
Yeah, no, that's great, and that speaks to this idea of having a relationship and having a conversation. This is not a one way. I want to get the stock document and sign it, and so that leads to where what we're really talking about here, which is how does somebody build their team, build this advisory team to help them with all of these questions, and so. Chris, I know you've got some thoughts about this. I want to hear from everyone, but how do you help someone assemble this advisory team, and what should someone be asking to even help select this team?
For me, I always kind of think of myself as kind of the quarterback of the team because the finance and the advice that we give, it touches estate planning, it touches taxes, but we are not the specialist when it comes to it. So if you kind of think of us as like a general practitioner when it comes to science, like when something happens, we're normally the first person you kind of go to. But if somebody's having a cardiac event, we're going to say go see a cardiologist. We're going to put that specialist in front of them that has more probable information about what they're going to be going through that can give that higher level of advice to what you're going to go through and the best options available to you. That's kind of the similar way that we do things, that we can give some tax advice, we can give some estate advice, we can work with people. If they already have an accountant, we proactively call their accountant in advance and we say, we're going to be working with Mr. and Mrs. Smith now. Do you have anything in play, or do you have any goals that you know of that they're trying to attain that we can work with you to make sure that everybody's operating on the same page? When the vast majority of our clients don't have wills, we've talked about that before. According to our numbers, only about 5% of life scientists have a will and have wills that are in place for their family. That number is extremely low. So the vast majority of people we talk to have never gone to see someone like Jody before. They've never put those plans into place, and we consider them a foundational piece to the wealth management plan. So we're going to tell you to go see someone like Jody, and we're going to make sure that those pieces are put into place. But if you have somebody already, we will actually do a review and we'll take a look at what it looks like and say, based on your current goals and circumstances, does it make sense? Should we put it in front of Jody and should we get a review done? Yes or no? Let's take a look at what your job is and your income is and your taxes are. Should we put you in front of Mark and get something done? If you already have an accountant, right? And we've kind of talked about this, and similar like what Jody was talking about when it comes to the online version. If you're doing your taxes online via one of the free systems, you're not getting a lot of advice. It's input versus output. And Mark and I have discussed this as well before. The vast majority of accountants, sadly, are the same way. They're not giving you advice. They're charging a premium fee for an input-output measure. And if you have an accountant like that that's charging that premium fee, change accountants. And I honestly mean that, because if you can get that same dollar for dollar value, but you're going to get advice on top of the dollars that you're paying to just do the input output, that's a
Yeah.
huge value add. And that could save you tens of thousands of dollars into the future if you're getting that proper advice. The same thing comes with us. If you're just getting investment advice, seek another advisor who's going to talk to you about taxes, who's going to talk to you about estate planning, who's going to talk to you about all 9 areas of wealth that's going on for you, because all of those things have a direct correlation to what your future wealth is going to look like and the building of those things. If you're just talking about what stock, bond, mutual fund to buy, great, you get performance return. We do that. But on top of that is going to be your philanthropy. It's going to be your education planning. It's going to be how much of a house should I buy and where and why, and how much of a mortgage rate should I do? How am I associating my credit? How am I going to leave more money to my heirs later down the road? How am I going to get saving and taxes? When you put it all together, the sum of the parts is way more than the individual pieces, because there's a lot of efficiencies between those cogs in the wheel.
Awesome. That's well said. Mark, anything to add to that? Especially if, what if the conversation starts with you? How do you kind of, weave in a Chris and start to help a client build this kind of team?
Yeah, that's a good question. This is when, if anybody saw the pre-part of this meeting, you saw the hand gesture I did when it relates to this. Oftentimes, tax complexity is the kind of the first entry into a need for more profound financial advice. Oftentimes, not always, but so ultimately, what that necessitates from your tax advisor is a visibility to and an understanding of your long-term life goals. And that's professional goals, that's family goals, that's the lot. And making sure we get people involved that can help. Chris is talking about he's the quarterback. I kind of feel like tax people are the water boy on the team, right? We're not necessarily the most glamorous part, but if you don't have hydration, you're not going to perform well, right? The other way, probably the better way that I would say this is, I see Chris as making sure you've got an effective plan in place. Tax advice is a little bit more about making sure you have an efficient plan in place, making sure you're doing things the most tax efficient way possible. And then Jody's team comes in to make sure it's enduring, right? You don't want it to flittle away as soon as something bad transpires in your life. You want it to endure from generation to generation. So that's kind of why it's so mission critical to have a comprehensive team that can put all those three things in place. Because without all three of them, then ultimately you have a plan that will fail you in some way or another. And so that's the way we'll stick with that analogy. I'm getting more positive affirmation from Dave on that analogy than the water boy analogy, but ultimately
I now we gotta, if Chris is the coach and Mark, you're the water boy, Jody, no pressure, but where do you fit into this?
I have no idea what I am on the football team.
we labored that one.
This is when we're going off script now, so that's we start to get creative. You can just bring it back to the Philadelphia, Eagles versus Steelers, and we shouldn't go down that path anymore or something,
Well, I mean, I'll be honest. I think Chris and Mark explained it so well in terms of how to collaborate, the need for collaboration. I'm not sure I could really add anything because they really did explain it incredibly well. And the only thing I would add is that you don't have to be wealthy. You don't have to be a high-level executive to need this team, right? Because it really is about the long term look. And even if you're starting out and you're just not sure, gosh, get that team together so that, like they were saying before, when something major does happen, you've already made those relationships and you have those trusted advisors right there ready to jump in and help you. So that's all I have to say about that. And I don't know who I am. I'm a cheerleader. Maybe I'm serving the hot dogs in the stands. I don't know.
This is good. This is I love how it's coming together. This is we a really, really wonderful conversation, and we could definitely spend a lot more time on all these things. And so, first of all, if there's anyone burning questions in the audience, feel free to put them into the Q&A. We have a few more minutes. I think that Jody, you made a really good point, which is you do not need to be wealthy to deserve this team, and and in fact, it kind of makes me think of you want to this is building a team for the future, and again, you want to do this before you need it, and ultimately your results in life, the outcomes you get from this are going to be better when you build a team like this. And so thinking about that, again, back to that 25-year-old who might not know, even, what their next job is going to be, much less, what they want their financial life and their personal life and everything to look like. How do you help? And this is, I want to hear from, everyone, I think, but how would you help someone kind of prepare for that first meeting? What questions should they be planning to answer, or what do they need to know about themselves to get started here? And maybe Chris, you're the right first answer for that, but how does someone get started here?
Me or Jody?
I think
Chris,
we'll hear from both, but Chris, if you want to kick it off.
All right, like for me, the simplest things is, at the end of the day, most people either want to be wealthy or dream of being wealthy. At the end of the day, right? They see through social media, they see through movies, they see through all this kind of stuff of what they want wealth to look like. I'm under the impression, and I'm a big believer in that anybody, regardless of wage, can be wealthy if they choose to be. Is it easier when you have more income? Yes. But does it stop everybody? The answer is an outright no, right? Anybody can be wealthy if they choose it to be. And if you start doing the right things at a younger age, it is so much easier in the future to do it earlier and then not have to play catch up. Because once the catch up has to happen, it takes so much more dollars later in the future than it does at an earlier age, that once you have the big house and once you have the cars and once you have the kids and once you have all these pressures that are being put on you, cash flows change, right? And it makes a big difference into the future. So if you have a 401k matching plan at work, take advantage of it. If you have ESOP programs at work, take advantage of it. These are all forms of your compensation that, if you're not signing on the dotted line or pressing the button on your computer, or however your company does it, you're missing out. And everybody would love to get a raise. It's just the natural way it's going to go. You're telling the company that you don't want all of the compensation that they're offering you. And that's a weird thing to kind of state it when you think of it on the flip side, right? You're saying, no, I don't want as much as you're willing to offer me. And that's just a weird thing. And when you have all these different opportunities, we've done the numbers, and it only takes $315 a month from the age of 25 to 65 to be a millionaire at age 65. If the average salary in life sciences is $142,000 and you have a 6-6 match program, that means you're putting well over $1,000 a month into the 6-6 match program, right? Which means if it only takes 300 and you're putting in over 1,000, you should be worth $3.5 to $4 million at the time that you get to retirement, just based on that agreement alone. That's no other inputs whatsoever. And net worth, once again, it comes to the value of your house, it comes to the value of your car, takes off all the debt that you have and things along those lines. So if you have a very simple 401k plan that should get you into the multi-million-dollar numbers, then there's no reason that you shouldn't be one of the wealthiest people in America. Because to be in the top 5%, you have to be worth 1.1 million. There's your top 5% number. And if you just contribute to a 401k plan, you're worth 3.5 at retirement, right? So those are the simple numbers.
No, that's awesome, and this is really really good conversation. We're gonna wrap it up in a second with one final question, but just for everyone out there, we will follow up with an email. You'll have access to be able to reach out to everyone for if you've got questions afterwards. So we'll be sure to share all of this, and we look forward to staying in touch on all these things. But just one final want to leave everyone with a one action step they can take over the next month or so. And Jody, want to kick it off with you. What should our audience be doing over the next month based on what they're hearing today?
I mean, I would simply make an appointment. I'd make an appointment with Chris, and I would make an appointment with, an attorney in your local area just to be educated. I think it's just so important that you be educated as to, what do I need? And really when I meet with people the first time, the only thing I really would need to know is what do they own? How do they own it? And are there beneficiaries on it? And then of course we also, pull in that financial advisor. So just make the call and don't be intimidated. Right? I mean, our job is to help you. We do not expect you to come in to know what you're talking about, to know what you want to do, to have all these decisions made. That's our job, to help you. So I think so many people are intimidated by the process. Don't be.
Excellent. Thank you.
Awesome,
Mark,
Jody.
action step for the audience.
I said it a little bit before. I'll say kind of the same thing now. These are a lot easier conversations to be had if you've got a relationship built. And we've said a lot in our firm that we're in the relationship business as much as I'm in the tax business, right? It's my responsibility to know your dreams, your goals, what's standing in the way of those from a tax perspective, maybe from other perspectives as well. And so this is almost sounds like I'm countering what Jody said, but you need to know what you want to get out of a relationship with people like Chris, like me, like Jody. And so I would almost write that down and go in to these appointments saying, you know what, I really think I can get these things from these relationships. Is that something you're willing to commit to? If not, maybe you need to, like to Chris's point, if I'm not giving you proactive advice, if I'm not trying to understand your goals and your dreams and how they're changing, then I might not be the right person for you. And so just having a good understanding of what you're trying to get out of these relationships, start building that network now, because ultimately, to Chris's point, I think actually Dave said it in one of our previous versions of this show. The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, but the next best time to plant a tree is right now. And so these relationships, starting them early, no matter where you are on the phase of life, right? Where you are on your dreaming journey, it's important to get those relationships started and cultivate those now in such a way that you can have these great, honest, open relationship conversations as you navigate next steps.
Yeah, no, awesome. Really well said. And you've teed it up perfectly for Chris to take it home. I know we've stolen all of your thunder now, Chris, but
No, that's good. I agree with both people, right? It's the main step is to take a step, right? If you don't take the step, nothing gets done. A goal without a plan is a wish, right? And at the end of the day, are you wishing it to happen, or are you actually going to take a step towards making it happen? I was telling Dave the other day, I was watching one of the Simon Sinek tutorials, and he was saying that self-help books are one of the most biggest sold book categories in all the United States, but they're also the biggest dust collector. Because once the people read the book, they don't do anything that they learned from the book to actually take that step forward and to get stuff done. And the biggest advice we can give you today is to take a step. It could be a baby step. It could take a giant leap. It could be whatever it is. But take a step towards what you're trying to achieve, you're going to feel better. You're going to have better peace of mind. You're going to feel less stress. You know you're working on it, and it's going to help you get towards that goal that you want to get to. So work hard towards it. Make sure that you're doing something to achieve it, and then go after it. And whatever your dream is, go get it.
Yeah. Love it, love it. Well said. Well, I want to thank you first, Chris. Thank you for inspiring this whole series. Mark, Jody, really appreciate the time. Everyone out there in the Philadelphia area, wherever you are, really appreciate your time on behalf of Big Four Bio, on behalf of Life Science Wealth. Thank you so much, and please stay in touch. We will keep you posted.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you
everybody,
very
and
much.
good luck to
Thank
all the
you.
attendees out there.
Take care. Have a good day.
All right.